Can hear me? Just checking. Great, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me to join the event today. I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to share our story so far and our experience with digital coaching as a tool for developing talent. So we'll have about 30 minutes for the segment, probably about 20 minutes for my presentation piece. If you have any questions along the way, feel free to type them into the chat function. I know we'll have somebody checking, and I'll make sure that we've got some time at the end to focus on those as well and give you the opportunity to ask what you would like. Okay, so why digital coaching for Asics? So before we sort of jump into to the depth of the topic, I just wanted to give first a very quick introduction to Asics. So Asics is actually an acronym, for those of you who don't know, which stands for Anima Sana in Corpore Sano, which is Latin, and it translates to a sound mind in a sound body. And our vision is to create a world where everyone can achieve a sound mind and a sound body through movement. So right from the very beginning of the company, our focus has really been on enabling personal well-being for everybody. And if we look internally as well as a company, in the past years, but also continuing into the future, our number one internal strategic choice is to really focus on people, on our employees, and building strong, engaged teams. And when we run our regular employee engagement surveys, our people are constantly telling us that they place a high importance on having the opportunity to learn and to grow. So I know that's not just Asics, for sure. This is something that's very common across a lot of companies, but a large part of my role is then looking at how we can continue to explore innovative ways to effectively help people to continue to learn and grow on an ongoing basis. So when we think about coaching specifically, actually, we've been using coaching in Asics for many years, but a lot of those moments for coaching were quite exclusive. And I think that's often where coaching has been placed in the past, where it was often reserved for people and within the executive team or very high up in the organization. It was delivered in English only, or sometimes it was part of a program where they had very limited coaching sessions. So maybe it was 2 or 3 sessions per individual for the program. So utilizing coaching like that was historically quite expensive because we had to move people around. Often we had sort of face-to-face sessions, so we were moving coaches and coachees. So it was quite difficult to coordinate, difficult to scale across EMEA, and not always viable to offer as an extended L&D intervention, actually. So we also were trying to shift our focus to being more sustainable. And we were trying to reach more employees across the EMEA region. So we were already delivering, this is also pre-COVID, we were already trying to deliver a lot of our programs and interventions using a blended approach, always looking for how we could shift things to a digital solution. So when we got to a point where we thought, basically answering the question of how can we bring coaching to more employees, it made a lot of sense that we already started to look into the digital space. So you can see there on the screen that some of the desired solutions that we were looking for when we were thinking about coaching was, how can we bring coaching to more people so that it's not seen as something that's so exclusive, reaching people across EMEA, but then also how could we create a program or offer coaching in a more flexible way, where it was also more self-directed, because we also know that it's quite difficult to coordinate people, to have them where they need to be at a set time. So how can we put the coachees more in the driving seat? So these were some of the desired solutions that we were looking for. So with those desired solutions in mind, we started exploring, and interestingly enough, it was about 1.5 years ago, I was attending a session just like this, where I was listening to another guest speaker talking about their relationship with CoachHub and how they were using that to develop leaders within their organization. And it was that moment where I really thought, oh, this could be a good solution for Asics. So I set up a call after the HR event and just started talking about whether or not CoachHub could be a good fit for Asics, and the rest is history. But so now that we're a little bit further along in that relationship, we've seen that having a more digital approach has really given us a huge amount of flexibility. So it's removed that need to physically move people around. And it really gives the option for the coachee to schedule their own sessions at their own convenience and really be in the driver's seat of that. So the coachees are completely responsible for driving the process, which is something that's quite different in the L&D space these days. So whilst they're setting up their profile in the beginning of the program, they also have the possibility to select their own preferences, such as really determining the background that they would like their coach to have. So what is the industry experience? How many years have they worked in that particular industry? All the way down to actually even selecting the gender and the language of the coach as well, so they can really have quite a personal experience. And then they own that process of scheduling their ongoing sessions. Being digital, it's made it much easier to scale across EMEA, creates more space for frequent sessions. Probably what's good to know as well is that we still offer the coaching under the umbrella of a program, but in the sense that there's a set start date, there's a set end date, and we do select a group of people who are running through the process simultaneously, but it's highly personalized because the individual themselves can select their areas of focus, what they want to develop, and and so it's much more personal in terms of a development experience. Good to spend some time also looking at the impact that we've seen so far. Important to note at this stage that we're actually still going through the program. So when we look at the impact, it's really what we're observing and what we're seeing throughout the program in practice rather than actually what we see on paper. So that's good just to keep in mind. But some really positive experiences so far. So we've seen a real increase in accountability. So I mentioned earlier about the coachee being in the driver's seat, but this is quite a big change from traditional programs where we really do tell people when they need to show up and what they need to do. The coachees have really had to step up and take ownership of the whole process, which has been interesting also just to observe and watch people's behavior with this process. So everything from connecting to the platform, setting up their goals and focus areas, keeping track of their coaching sessions and making sure that they show up has all been really on them. It's also highly tailored. So one of the nice things about the impact of this is it really meets the coachee where they are right now and today. And that's probably one of the big shifts we've seen, is that in a lot of other L&D programs that we offer, it's often positioned from the perspective of what the company thinks is relevant for that group of individuals, where in this case, the individual really does for themselves identify what's my priority and what's important for me today. And so that could be within their role or where they want their career to go, but it could also just be in building relationships with those around them or simply managing their day-to-day lives. So that really is completely individualized. Another great point I want to mention is that this has helped us to target completely new audiences. So I mentioned before that it used to be quite exclusive for executives. The current group we have going through the program, they are senior leaders, but I want to also point out that the pilot group that we ran with CoachHub, actually they weren't leaders. Some of them weren't even leaders at all within the organization. We identified some high potentials within our commercial organization, and the scope of their roles was very varied. So they had different roles, different grade levels. The only thing we knew about this particular group was that we identified them as top talent. So we decided to then offer coaching as an opportunity for them to help guide their next steps in their career and give them some focus so they could keep growing personally and also within the company. But if you think about that from an L&D point of view, for that diverse group of people, we could never have designed a program that would have been relevant for all of them. It just wouldn't have been possible. So it's really been able to target new audiences with the coaching. About 4 weeks ago, we brought our current group back together again, just to look at where they are in the process today, and to gather some of their feedback. So I just mentioned that it is a group of senior leaders within the organization. We have 20 senior leaders going through the program. It was interesting to get their feedback, but also you see on the left-hand side of the slide there, not surprising to see some of the doubts they had going into the program. We're talking about very senior individuals with a heavy workload and high priorities on their list already. So it wasn't surprising to see them come in with doubts about whether or not they could be committed enough to prepare properly for their sessions and really get the most out of the program. But it was great to get them all together actually and hear some of that feedback, because even though they started with these doubts, it was so positive to see them sharing the insights that they'd taken from the coaching so far, and also recognizing how important it was for them to take time for their own development as well, which was really great to see. You can also see on the slide there that we have an average rating of 4.9 out of 5 for the coaching so far. After each coaching session, the coachee is asked to rate the session, and you can also see the 3 criteria there that they're rated on. So also really positive feedback coming in from this group as well. So far, this group has completed 140 coaching sessions since the 1st of June. So even that in itself is really encouraging to see that, we're really happy with the engagement, the momentum, and considering that it's completely self-directed, we're also really impressed with the number of coaching sessions we're seeing taking place. So yeah, quite successful. Now, it is a digital tool, so as you can expect, it does come with some benefits as well in terms of tracking and keeping an eye on what the behavior is like and what's happening in the background. So if we think about it purely from managing a program, the dashboard itself is great for tracking the regular things you would expect. So for example, sessions over time, seeing who has their sessions actually booked in, measuring satisfaction like I showed you on the previous slide. But in addition to the more standard metrics you would expect to see, I wanted just to take a moment to also share some of my favorite elements from the dashboard as well. And these two are, so on the right-hand side, the strengths assessment results. So when an individual is setting up their profile on the CoachHub platform, they are presented with an assessment, which looks at their areas of strengths and areas of opportunity. And what the dashboard shows us is collectively as a group, what are the strengths of this group and what are the areas of development? Which is interesting from my perspective from L&D or HR, because it gives me some additional insight into this particular group and sort of collectively, what are we dealing with? What's the makeup of this group? And then on the left-hand side, part of the tool is set up that the individuals can select the areas that they want to focus on with their coach. And for your own information, this is actually the real information about the Asics group. So you are looking at our results. I've taken the numbers away. But to give you some insight, what's interesting for me is I can look at those focus areas. And if I just take the top 3 as an example, so around communication, emotional regulation, and conflict management, if I think about that from the point of view of learning and development and what this group might need in future, I can look at that and think potentially for this group, there might be some space there for helping them deal or navigate difficult conversations, potentially. So it's on top of just the regular metrics and data you would expect to see from the dashboard. There's some really useful insights there that you can dig a little bit deeper and help me plan for the future as well, based on what I'm seeing there. So this is actually, it's my last slide, but I wanted to spend a little bit of time in digging a little bit deeper to help you with some key points that I think will be quite useful for you to take away if you're in a position where you're really thinking about, is this the type of solution that would fit well for my organization? So I've split it between sort of two groups, looking more at general HR or the company, and then also from L&D. And then also different phases of the program. So if we look first at the implementation level, when we're sort of setting up the relationship between CoachHub and our company, we were able to integrate the two platforms together. So internally, we were able to integrate with CoachHub, which allowed us to have a single sign-on integration. So if your own company has an IT team like Asics who are quite set on having a very secure sign-on setup, then this is possible. And it does allow your participants to be able to sort of seamlessly log into the platform. If I also think about the implementation from my own experience from L&D, we had a very close collaboration with CoachHub. So from day one, we were assigned a customer success manager who really helped us to not only navigate the setup of the process, but also to help us really define quite clearly what did we want to get out of coaching in general for this group of individuals. And each time you set up a program, you'll have that conversation as well. So it helped me to also understand what do we want, what would the success look like from this group of people. And CoachHub worked close with us to also just make sure that we kept on track with those goals as well. From just the program operation point of view, so again, sort of general HR or company, the platform and the dashboard is providing you real-time data. So in terms of keeping an eye on or just making sure that the program is running smoothly, all the content and information is there and available, so you can see how engaged your people are, and as I showed you on the previous slide, the focus areas that the group is also working on. From the L&D point of view, I have to say, one of the easiest programs I've ever implemented and run. I think for any of you who have been implementing many L&D programs over your careers, you'll know that they're quite heavy on coordination. It's quite difficult moving people around and making sure that everyone's organized. This program really does run itself, so it's a really great one to implement, just because you give so much responsibility to the coachee. So in my experience, I've only really need to step in on small exceptional cases where things didn't go well. So yeah, that really nice one from L&D. If I also think about it from integration with existing processes, we've really linked the digital coaching to the performance cycle. This helps us to identify who are the potential groups that we want to offer coaching to, and then moving across to L&D in terms of ongoing processes. We've also built in a 360 feedback process. So this has been quite helpful for us to provide an additional resource for the coaching itself. The coachee can then go in with their results from their 360 feedback, which really helps the coach and the coachee define what are the areas for development. We'll also be implementing a 360 feedback process at the end of the program, so that we are also able to measure the impact of the coaching for those individuals as well over the 6 months to see if there's been a shift. So just some of the key points that I wanted to share with you there. I know I've sort of thrown a lot of information at you. It really is our experience so far. It's been very positive. I'm sure that there are also maybe things I've missed, or maybe points that you think would be important for your own company. So I wanted to just make sure that we've got enough space to discuss and share. And Jordy is also on the call as well from CoachHub. So if you do have more questions about how the tool works, how the process works, then he's also there to answer those questions. But really happy to have a discussion now and just make it more of a dialogue.
Awesome. Thank you, Carmen, and great insights. And the questions are streaming in. So
great.
So you've definitely triggered a nerve there. So first question from Teresa. You point out that there was a shift in your target audience to more high potential talents. Do you see the program as feasible and scalable to your entire employee population?
Yeah, good question. I think you have to be realistic. I think budget always plays a role in that particular question. In an ideal world, yes, amazing. We'd love to offer coaching to as many people as we possibly could. I would say the short answer is it does give you reach across your whole organization, but I think like anything, you still have to be selective in terms of how you want to position it. We still like positioning coaching as a gift in a way, that it is something that we want to offer to people who are showing the right types of behavior and who are motivated to learn, and the types of people that will willingly go and set up their own personal development plan, and so then we're willing to work with them to make sure we're giving them the tools to work and to move along that path. So yeah, I think that the short answer is yes, it means you could reach anybody across your organization, no matter what their role, no matter what their level. But you would have to think carefully about how you want to position it. I think as soon as you start offering something to everybody, then I think it starts to lose its value a little bit.
Yeah, so it's a positioning exercise as much. Yeah. So then how many coachees did you include in the first program? And I assume that's both relating to the pilot program and to your senior leadership program.
Yeah, so yeah, good question. So in the pilot program, we had 10. So they were the 10 high potentials in the commercial organization. And then for the program that we're running now, we have the 20 senior leaders.
Awesome, great. And do the employees take the time during work time? So is it unpaid company time that they do their coaching, or do they do that outside of working hours?
Yeah, that's also a good question. I think the beauty of this, because it's self-directed, we're not really watching and checking when people are having their session, so we can see when they're having it. I think it's a very personal experience. So I think some of the coachees would like to utilize their work time, and that's okay, and we encourage that. Some of them feel that it's better, or they can think clearer and have more space mentally to use their personal time, and they'd prefer to do it outside of work hours. And then they're also not having additional distractions coming in, like chat messages or emails and things. So the answer to that, I would say, completely personal preference, but we're encouraging them to take part when it's best for them.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's interesting, Carmen. It's what we see with other organizations as well. It's especially you have coaches all over the world, so there's coaches in different time zones as well. So sometimes it makes sense to have it a little bit early in the morning, or maybe a little bit later at night. So the flexibility is there to have it outside of your working hours. But of course, it's so easy to just squeeze it into your calendar, just a 45-minute session to talk to your coach, especially if the thing that you want to be coached on has an impact on the session maybe, or the meeting that you have afterwards. So you can immediately apply what you've been discussing with your coach in your work.
Yes, and that can be highly relevant, especially when dealing with tricky situations, for example. So yeah, great. I have had more questions coming in, so some of the questions are jumping. So do you use internal or external coaches on the platform, and how can they be selected to be on the platform? I assume this might be coming from a budding coach that would love to be included.
Jordy, I think this is one for you.
Yeah, definitely. So we use coaches from CoachHub. So it's mainly our own coaching pool. We have currently around more than 3,000 coaches worldwide, and how they are selected, we have some criteria before they are able to enter the platform, which is they need to be certified and accredited by one of the leading coaching associations, so either the ICF or the EMCC, which means that all of our coaches have at least 500 coaching hours of experience. What we see in a coaching pool is that most of them have at least 1,000 hours of experience. One of the other things that we ask our coaches is to have business acumen. So basically what we want them to have is have had a management role for at least 6 years in a relevant industry, so that they are able, both from a language perspective, to speak to their coachees, but also from a business language perspective, so they know exactly what they're talking about, also related to the business that they're coaching.
Awesome. Awesome. I think that's very important. Having seen the coaching industry develop over time, there's definitely different levels of expertise and competencies. So I think this one's back to Carmen. So with this coaching program, are you also covering some of the benefits that a mentoring program would normally offer, or do you actually still offer a mentoring kind of style program as well?
Yeah, so internally, ASICS also have a mentoring program. So we see these as they're positioned slightly differently. So we do mentoring separately. Separately,
cool. And then what are the main benefits and outcomes you had hoped for and hope to achieve with the coaching program? And maybe that's different from what the group is receiving or expecting as benefits.
Yeah, so I think it's a difficult one to answer at this stage because we're still sort of we're really in the infancy of the program, and obviously we have ideas for ourselves of what we hope to achieve. I would say there are two things that I will mention in terms of what's really on my radar. So one, from a business perspective, that's really, we're looking at sort of succession planning and retaining people within the organization. So that's a real key success measure for the organization. But secondly, when I look at it from an L&D point of view, I think we start to struggle at a certain point with individuals in terms of giving them something that's relevant for them, for themselves. You start to work with people who the standard types of programs just don't really cut it anymore, and they're looking for something more, or they're just more advanced in their career, that it has to be about their personal effectiveness and their own experience. So for me, it's really about targeting these individuals that need something more that I just can't cover anymore with a standard program.
Yes, yeah, and that makes sense. Totally. A question about the risks. So what are the risks of digital coaching, and have there been any negative experiences?
Yes, so I think we still see a lot of individuals that are transitioning into the digital space, and it's not easy for everybody. I think I think if you've had experience with face-to-face sessions before, face-to-face programs, it's very difficult sometimes to capture that same experience in a digital platform. So I think we have had some feedback from some people who have said, oh, the coaching I've had in the past, I enjoyed more because I was face-to-face with the person. I think you have to give it a little bit of time as well, to allow people to experience the new way of working and learning, in the hope that they also get used to the new approach. And I have also seen over time that a lot of the people who were skeptical are warming to the idea of the digital approach as well. And I think sometimes when you weigh up the pros and the cons, also the fact that they can have much more flexibility and have more sessions, I think that also starts to outweigh the fact that they're not sitting in a room with the person anymore. I think also the digital or technology itself has come such a long way and has really been accelerated as well over the COVID period that I think people are also just so used to working in this way now as well, where we've almost been forced. It's been quite a handy catalyst for change to push people towards a digital approach now. So that's been a small savior from COVID, I would have to say.
True, exactly. Yeah. Yes, exactly. So the all dreaded question, how are you calculating the ROI on the program?
Yeah, I think Jordy, me and you were talking about this this week as well. Yeah, I think that's a difficult one to answer at this point, also because we're so fresh in the program. But maybe, Jordy, do you have any examples of how some of other companies are measuring the ROI?
Yeah, definitely. So it really depends on what the company is trying to accomplish. So what Carmen was talking about from the individual perspective, every coachee can focus on his or her strengths and weaknesses. From a company perspective, we can really align strategically to find what do we want to accomplish here and how can we put that into a monetary value. Based on that, we can actually see the changes over time. And of course, we cannot do it in a 3 to 6 month program. So we need a longer partnership with our customers, and that's also what we're aiming for with Asics. So there's no clear answer to that, but it is possible, but it's difficult and it's time consuming. But definitely it's something that we're able to do and we're working on as well.
Great. Well, I'd like to thank you both for generously answering the questions. We are out of time. There are some more questions left, actually. So I do urge you, those of you that asked the questions, to connect directly with Carmen and Jordy. And you can do that on the main platform. Also, go visit the exhibitor stands and pick up conversations there, because they will give you the information you require. And we are ready to be moving on. So thank you both. Thank you, Carmen. Thank you, Jordy.
Thanks for having us.
You're very welcome.
Thanks, Anne.
Thank you.